Welcome to today's webinar from the AIM Center. Today's topic is best practices for more accessible social media, and Mindy Johnson of the AIM Center is here to give this really important webinar because we know how many of us are using social media and overlook a lot of the built-in features that can make our posts and tweets and updates accessible to everybody. So this is a really important webinar. I'm glad that you're here. A little bit of information about the AIM Center. Our purpose is to build the capacity of states, districts, post-secondary institutions, families, publishers, and workforce development entities, as well as other stakeholders, to increase the availability and use of high-quality, accessible materials and technologies that support improved learning outcomes and opportunities for learners with disabilities. There are 3 tiers of technical assistance that the AIM Center provides. These include universal, so we are here to provide service technical assistance to anybody who needs to reach out to us. This is readily available to everybody through our aim@cas.org URL, as well as our email, as well as through our website at aim.cas.org. There's targeted, so we work with specific states in response to specific requests that come from the field, so we focus assistance there for all stakeholders. And finally, we provide technical assistance through an intensive program. That's ongoing collaborative work on best practices with 8 states, and those include Alaska, Florida, Indiana, Iowa, Maryland, Minnesota, Ohio, and Texas. So I'm going to hand this over to Mindy to get started with best practices for more accessible social media.
Thanks, Great, thanks, Cynthia. So my name is Mindy Johnson, as Cynthia said. I am an instructional designer, social media and communication strategist for both the AIM Center and CAST. I actually counted today just to make sure that I had the number right. I run 23 different accounts every single day for a variety of social media platforms and identities on social media. So if you ever see the CAST accounts go silent, please somebody call me, because it probably means that something's wrong. So I run the CAST account, the AIM accounts, the UDL Center accounts, the UDL on campus accounts. So those are just a few of the accounts that I run. And I run them on Twitter, Facebook, Google+, Snapchat, although we haven't done much with Snapchat yet, and Instagram. We have a Pinterest account that we've just started. So we're all over social media trying to get the word out about accessible materials and about universal design for learning. So welcome, and hopefully I can answer some of your questions throughout. So please feel free to ask questions in the chat box, and I'll keep an eye on it, and Cynthia will keep an eye on it, and we'll try to get all your questions answered. So this is a quote from Stella Young, who is an Australian disability rights activist who actually passed away just a few years ago. But I'd like to start with this quote because it really highlights the reason why this is called best practices for more accessible social media. My disability exists not because I use a wheelchair, but because the broader environment isn't accessible. So sometimes our environments are actually the disabling factor for us. And unfortunately, that's the case with social media in some ways. So it's just kind of a way to set this up. But there are ways that we can make our social media posts more accessible for our followers. I also want to orient you a little bit to my slides. In the lower, on the bottom of each of my slides, you'll see the AIM Center Twitter handle, my Twitter handle, the AIM for All hashtag, which is what we use at the AIM Center. There's also a bit.ly link, a bit.ly, and Leslie's going to put that in the chat box so you can get that. What that is that's a digital handout that I've created. So all of this, the information that I share here, you can not only get on the AIM Center website, you can download the slides as a PDF, but the digital handout actually goes through even more detail and gives you links to all the places that I talk about. There's a link to Stella Young's TED Talk, which is outstanding if you haven't seen it. So I just wanted to orient you to that, and that's on every slide. So when we talk about social media accessibility, there's a lot of different moving parts. So the WebAIM did a screen reader user survey in 2015, and they asked screen reader users, and I think it was over 1,000 participants in this survey, how accessible their social media was. The good news is that over 57% of respondents thought that their social media was somewhat or very accessible, which is actually an increase from the previous version of this same survey. So that's the good news. The bad news is that the rest of the people either didn't know whether their social media platform was accessible or found it somewhat or very inaccessible. And you know, if you want to think about the glass half empty, the somewhat accessible still isn't quite what we want it to be. Anyway, that's just to give you an overview. These platforms themselves have some issues in terms of accessibility. But again, we can always make our posts within those social media platforms a little bit more accessible for our users. So sorry about there's a little weird glitch that sometimes the words disappear on my slide. So there's so many different social media platforms out there. So we're going to do a quick little survey to ask you which social media platforms do you use regularly. So if you want to start that, yeah. So go ahead and click on as many as you use regularly. Do we want to broadcast?
Whenever you're ready.
Let's go ahead and broadcast those. Great. So we have a lot of Facebook users, LinkedIn, Pinterest. Great. A lot of Twitter users. Fantastic. All right.
Like everybody's participating. This is great.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you all so much for doing that. So I use all of these, except for Snapchat. I have an account, but I haven't ever posted anything. I just play with the filters and download the pictures. I haven't quite figured out the purpose of Snapchat, but I've got an account. I like to play with social media, so that's what I do there. But my preferred platform for social media in terms of my everyday professional learning is actually Twitter. I use Facebook for connecting with family and friends. I rarely use Google+, like most people rarely use it, but there are some great Google+ communities out there. There's especially a great UDL and higher ed Google+ community that you might want to get familiar with. I'll add that to the digital handout. Yeah, let's go ahead and end that. But there's so many different platforms, and they all have these different features that can help with accessibility. So what we're going to talk about today is no matter what platform you're using, no matter what platform you choose, these are some things that we can do on any platform that we choose that can help make our posts a little bit more accessible for our followers. So this graphic, I actually created this for the ISTE, and ISTE is the International Society for Technology and Education conference. I'm a part of the Inclusive Learning Network there, and we did an accessible materials playground. And so I created this graphic to help people sort of consolidate the 5 things that I wanted to get across in terms of social media accessibility. And on that digital handout, there's actually a link to download this yourself, and you can share it through your social media channels if you want to. And it includes a image description as well. But what we're going to talk about today is I'm going to go through each one of these ideas: plain language, camel case hashtags, image descriptions, captioned video, and link shorteners. And we're going to talk about some examples of how to actually do these things on some different platforms. Oh, Reddit. I forgot to ask what was the other one. Sorry about that. And Don asked me where I found my icons. I actually created those myself. I'm a wannabe designer. Using Photoshop, actually, yeah. So the first one, plain language, that's really, you get a lot of talk about plain language, especially on some of the federal social media accessibility sites. And again, I have a link to one of those in the digital handout. But the basic idea is to try to avoid acronyms, abbreviation, and jargon. Now, we all know that in education, we love acronyms, abbreviations, and jargon. So sometimes it's really difficult to tell when we're doing it. A good rule of thumb or a good practice is to have somebody who's not involved in education take a look at your posts every once in a while and just kind of do a gut check to make sure that your information is in plain language, plain enough language that people can understand it. So here's an example. This is not plain language. It is imperative that our MTSS includes UDL at all levels of instructional support. Now, I can actually make sense of that sentence. It's not a complicated sentence, but there's a lot of jargon in it. It sounds very academic, and people may not necessarily understand what those abbreviations mean. So an alternative to that in plain language might be, universal design for learning isn't just for students who struggle, it's for everyone. Because that's the basic idea from that not plain language example. It's the idea that UDL should be at all levels of the MTSS, so multiple tier systems of support. It's for all students, not just the ones at the top of the triangle. It doesn't exactly go into explaining all of that, and my plain language example didn't include MTSS. But my point here is that I spelled out one of the acronyms. I humanized it, so I made it, this is it's for everyone. I used conjunction, so I used isn't instead of is not. There's just a few different little techniques that I use to sort of friendly up the language a bit. And that's the whole idea behind plain language. We just want to make it so that somebody who isn't into the jargon that you're used to using with your colleagues can also understand your post, because we want them to get to that great information that you have. So it makes sense. All right, so that's it for plain language. Camel case hashtags. So Camel Case makes hashtags easier to read. And there's actually a bunch of links that I put about hashtags and what hashtags are and when to use them in the digital handout that I created. Basically, hashtags help categorize your posts. It's a good rule of thumb to use hashtags sparingly, so not more than 2 or 3 or 4 per post if you're going to use them. And actually, hashtags aren't just for Twitter anymore. Hashtags work on Facebook, Pinterest, Instagram. Oh, sorry, my microphone keeps going in and out. I'll try to sit closer to the microphone. Hopefully that will help. And also feel free to use the closed captioning if things get too chopped up for you. Thank you for that. So Facebook uses hashtags, Google Plus uses hashtags. LinkedIn hasn't jumped in on the bandwagon for hashtags, but I foresee that in the future. You heard it here first. That's my prediction. But hashtags are really, I mean, you can search on Google with hashtags and see what comes up, and it's not just Twitter. So anyway, that's what hashtags are. Now, a lot of people ask me, so what's Camel Case? Well, I wrote Camel Case in Camel Case to give you an example, but I think this image makes it even more clear. So Camel Case is called Camel Case because of the humps of the camel. So basically what it is to capitalize the first words, the first letters of the words in a multiple word hashtag. So for some more examples, we have some not camel case examples and some camel case examples. So the not camel case right there is obviously not in camel case, and the camel case one is. So the ones on the left are not camel case, and the ones on the right do use camel case. So camel case, the reason why we want to use camel case is not only to make our hashtags easier for screen readers to figure out where the start and stop of words are in our hashtags, but it actually makes it easier for sighted people to see what we're trying to say too. So if you compare the more you know hashtag with the camel case, the more you know hashtag, it's actually much easier on the eyes. You can actually read it like you were reading, like you're reading words that have spaces between them. A couple of interesting examples I put up there, and there's different schools of thoughts about this. So for example, UDL Chat is a chat that I'm a co-host of every first and third Wednesday from 9 to 9:30 Eastern on Twitter. Some people ask, well, why don't, in the camel case version of UDL Chat, why don't you capitalize the C in chat? And basically the reason why I choose not to is because it differentiates the UDL as an abbreviation and the chat as a separate word. So sometimes you have to make judgment calls on, what's easier to read and what's not easier to read. The same thing with, do I always put a capital letter at the beginning of a hashtag? If it's something like A11Y, which if you don't know, A11Y is the official hashtag of accessibility because there are 11 characters between the A and the Y in the word accessibility. But anyway, you can use either a lowercase a or an uppercase A because there's only one, that's only one word. And again, with aim for all, it's either, I think it's okay to do either lowercase aim for all or uppercase aim for all. It just kind of depends on, because the for sort of breaks up the two words, aim and all. So anyway, it's basically the idea that you want to make your hashtags, when you use them, easy for people to differentiate what the words are. So here's another example. This is a tweet I sent out a couple of months ago. And it has an image. I said, thanks to my fellow hashtag ISTE standards. And again, I used the capital ISTE and the lowercase standards, colleagues. I think I may need a new business card, thought trigger, favorite role. And then I mentioned ISTE Connect, which is the official ISTE Twitter account. So you can, it was actually I triggered somebody's thought, and they mocked up this image of a new business card for me, which I thought was pretty funny and clever. So I posted it on Facebook, but you can see I use hashtags in a couple of different ways. So the hashtags that weren't part of my sentence, I actually put at the end of my tweet because I like to do that as kind of a courtesy to screen reader users, putting links and hashtags at the end of my posts, just because it can get a little annoying if you're hearing hashtags over and over and over again from a screen reader. But it's just a personal choice. I feel like doing that. It's not necessarily something you have to do. It's just something to keep in mind as you're doing it. But I also use the hashtag in the middle as part of the sentence. So yeah, that's Camel Case. Any questions about Camel Case? All right. Well, if there are, please feel free to put them in the chat box, and we'll get to them as they happen. Great. So glad. And Don, I'm so glad that you love the chat. It's really a lot of fun. It is simple. I can't take credit for the idea, though. I wish I could. I actually love telling people about Camel Case, because it's like the light bulb goes off, and it's just like, oh my gosh, why wasn't I doing this before? You see these long strings of hashtags that have no Camel Case, and I'm just like, I can't even look at them anymore. All right. Thanks, Leslie. So let's get to the third item to make your social media a little bit more accessible. Image descriptions. So we all know that on websites and in documents that are going to be online, we want to have descriptions for our images. We want to have alt text, and sometimes we want to have longer descriptions for images that require it as part of the context of the pages. But did you know that you can actually add image descriptions to images that you post on social media? So Twitter actually lets you now, and I'll walk through how to do this, lets you add image descriptions to your tweeted images that can only be read by a screen reader, but it's just a quick accessibility tick box that you can check, and then anytime you go to, it's only for the web version of Twitter and the mobile versions, the iOS, Android, and Windows mobile versions, I believe, of Twitter that you can do this. So you can't use a third-party app like Hootsuite to do this, and you can't use Buffer or, and not even TweetDeck, and Twitter even owns TweetDeck. They're hoping to spread the API out, but that may take a little while. Yeah. TweetDeck is one of my favorites. So here is how to turn on image descriptions in the web version of Twitter. So the first thing you do is you click your picture in the upper right corner of the Twitter window, and you go down to Settings. You click that. And then on the left-hand side, under your other picture, you're going to go way down to the bottom to that little bitty accessibility word right there at the bottom. The only thing under accessibility on the web version is a tick box for image descriptions. You tick that little box, compose image descriptions, tick the save or click the Save Changes box button, and you're all set. And it will prompt you to then add image descriptions whenever you add an image from the web version of Twitter. There are also directions on how to do this for iOS and Android on the Twitter website, and that again, a link on step-by-step instructions on how to do this is on the digital handout. So let me show you what that actually looks like. So here's I'm composing a new tweet, so I just clicked that I was going to compose a new tweet, and this little window comes up. I wrote a tweet. I love quoting Research Mark, and if you don't follow Research Mark and you're into educational research, he's quite the person to follow. So it's basically a joke account, but it's really actually very good. It's a professor, and I can't remember where he's out of, but he does internet memes using Mark Wahlberg, and it's just outstanding. Anyway, he actually has some memes that relate to UDL, so I'm a big fan. Anyway, you see that little add description thing right above the who's in this photo, where you can actually tag people in the photos. The add description, if you click that, this window will pop up. And underneath the photo or the image that you have, it says, describe this photo for the visually impaired. And I can't remember how many characters you have to do this, but it's more than 140. So any text that's in one of these images actually cannot be read by a screen reader. There's a new sort of trend in social media, on Facebook and Twitter and and Instagram even, that people are trying to escape the character limits by putting these big, long bodies of text in images. But those people who can't see those images or can't access those images can't actually read what's in those posts, and that's not good. So what you can do is you can describe this image in Twitter. And I wrote a short little image description. I included the text that's in the image. I can work with the means, but I'd rather party with the outliers. That's totally UDL. If you're familiar with Universal Design for Learning, I just love it. And then you click Apply. And then your image description is right there below your image. Now, you will not, and you and your followers who are sighted and don't use a screen reader will not ever see that image description or know that it's there. However, your followers who use image or use a screen reader will absolutely thank you. And it's that simple to do on Twitter. It's really, really easy. And I'm so happy that they made this baby step toward making Twitter more accessible for users. Now, Twitter wasn't the top social media platform that you all are using. So what do you do if your platform doesn't actually have doesn't actually let you add image descriptions as an image description? Well, what you can actually do is add the image description right to your posts. Now, Facebook has a new artificial intelligence that actually adds descriptions to your images for you. However, it doesn't allow you to actually change anything. So it's an AI, it's an artificial intelligence, so it's not always perfect. And it may not actually point out the things in your image that you want people to see, and it may not be able to read the text that's in your image. So I always like to, even though I know Facebook is doing more with image descriptions, what I'd love for them to do is to show us what those descriptions are and be able to alter those descriptions so that we can, because we know what's best, what we want people to see in our images or know that's in our images. So, but what you can do, this is a post from Instagram that I did during the ISTE convention. And basically, the important thing in this image was I wanted people to see the banner that said, "We are leading the charge for change." And so that's what I wrote as my caption in Instagram to show that that's my image description. Now, I probably could have added, a banner at the ISTE conference in Denver. That would have been a better description. But it was fast. I was on my phone, and this was as good as I could do at the time. But of course, there are much better examples out there. But just to show you that it can be really simple, and actually, there's a link on the digital handout. I don't know if you guys know. What's his name? I'm going to forget his name. It's Tommy Edison. And he is he's actually called the Blind Film Critic. He's wonderful. And he does these videos on what it's like to be blind, and they're fascinating. And he has a great sense of humor, which I totally appreciate. Anyway, he has a whole video on how he posts photos to Instagram. And how he adds the image descriptions as the captions. So it's just a great technique to use if you are posting an image on social media that needs a description. Any questions about that? Tommy Edison's Twitter handle, I will find that for you and get it on the I know, I'm not a social media. Well, you know what? Stalking in social media is not as creepy as in real life, right? But the Tommy Edison video, I actually believe that if you click on that link, it goes right to YouTube. And all of his social media information is there, so you can find that there. So Facebook lets you put captions on your photos. Oh, thank you, John. Facebook lets you put captions on your photos, and that's what I'm advocating for. When you put your photos on Facebook, you may have something to say about them, but then underneath, what I usually do is put like a dashed line, and then image description, colon, and then I describe what the image is. Yep, captions. I know captions, we're going to talk about video next, and captions mean something completely different in videos. These are great questions. All right. So we're ready to talk about captioned video. So this is another one. Basically, when you're linking to a video from your social media posts, and we do this a lot, and just like images, videos are super important on social media, and we shouldn't not post videos and not post images on social media because we know that those help with engagement, and they can, they're in multiple representations, so we don't want to not do it. We just want to make sure that when we post them, that that as many people as possible can access that information as well. And it's easier than ever, really, 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 truly. So this is a non-example. I like to do non-examples as well. This is a video that was posted, I think it was actually a Budweiser video, but they made Harry Carey, who is the Cubs announcer, they after the Cubs won the World Series, they put out a video and had Harry Carey announcing the winners in Cleveland. So this is auto captions on YouTube, and some people think, well, YouTube is just going to auto caption it. I don't have to worry about captioning the video myself. But as you can see, the video caption there says, left, hello, everybody, Carry, Carry, flavor it. Now the actual words that were spoken during that little short clip was, hello again, everybody, Harry Carey in Cleveland. So as you can see, auto captions can go really, really wrong, so we shouldn't necessarily rely on those as our final captions for our videos, especially on YouTube. Auto captions go on automatically on YouTube. And a picture of a Facebook, I should have put a Facebook example in there. I'll try to find one, and I will, I know I've done them before for the CAST account. If you follow CAST on Facebook, you'll see a lot of our images have, either the description is within the post itself, like if there's text in the image, I usually write the text that's in the image in the post. That's another way that you can do that. Or I'll have that little ... and then the image description. Yes, so Jen has seen my slides ahead of time, obviously. That's a great segue. What you can actually do is take the captions that are automatically generated in YouTube, and you can edit those. So YouTube is getting better and better and better, and again, YouTube is basically Google. It's owned by Google. No, it's fine, Jen. It was perfect. And yes, the person who's the guest, if the speakers have foreign accents, that can be really, really dicey as well. Accents, or if they have a speech impairment, that can also affect the quality of the auto captions. Or if you have multiple speakers, I mean, there's just so many things that can go wrong with auto captions. However, they are a good place to start, so you don't have to start from scratch if you don't have a transcript of the video that you're captioning. So you can actually go in, and there's directions that I linked to from the digital handout, where you can actually go into your videos, take what YouTube has transcribed from the video, and edit it, and then save that as the captions that people will see when they turn on the captions in YouTube. So that's a really, really, really easy way to caption videos on YouTube. Now Vimeo has a similar thing. They don't have auto captions, but you can upload captions. It's usually an SRT file, and YouTube does too. So if you have your video captioned separately, you can upload that as a separate file on YouTube as an SRT file. And Facebook. So this is actually, I was editing a video on Facebook, and you can actually add captions to your Facebook videos as well. And again, there's a couple of naming conventions, so you want to check out the links that I have in the digital handout. But you upload the SRT file, basically named the same thing as your video file with, I think, appended with EN for English if it's in English, or there's other languages that you have to append on the file name. But it's just that easy, right? You have an SRT file, and what you can actually do if you have a native video on Facebook is, and what I've done in the past actually, is upload it to YouTube, edit the captions in YouTube because it's just so easy, and then download the SRT file from YouTube, which you can do also. The naming conventions, I'm sorry the screenshot is so small, but there's an upload SRT file, and there's a little question mark there. If you hover over that question mark, it actually tells you the naming conventions. That's a great question, Sarah. I don't know if you can use this on the Facebook mobile app or not, but I do know that you can absolutely do it after the fact if you edit your video. So all you have to do is edit the video that you uploaded and then add the SRT file. But you may be able to do it on mobile. I'm not absolutely sure. I'll have to check on that. That's a great question. But yeah, so don't leave out your captions when you post a video on Facebook. Oh, hi, Jessica. It's okay. I'm glad you're a human and not just a guest. All right. So another thing we need to think about when we post videos on social media is sometimes it's a really nice practice to include the fact that it is linking to a video in your post itself. So this is 3Play Media, and if you want to build that PLN and you want to follow somebody who has some amazing information on video captions, 3Play Media is a great one to follow. They have great blog posts, great free resources. They're just fantastic. But see how in the post it says why you have a responsibility to make your video accessible, and then in brackets it says video in capital letters. So basically it's prompting your users, and they actually do this for all of the links that they send out. They say either video or white paper or survey. It just gives your users a heads up that that's what's going to happen when they click the link. And that's a really nice practice to do. I don't always do it, and I have to admit that to all of you. It's self-disclosure. I don't always, but I'm really trying to get in the habit of doing that because I just found it to be a really, really nice, friendly practice. All right, we're at the last one. Link shorteners. So link shorteners will save character. I mean, the reason for them in the beginning was to save characters. So for things like Twitter, this is a lifesaver because you know how horribly long URLs can be. And sometimes they're just a bunch of characters that don't make a whole lot of sense. And so when that's read by a screen reader, it's torturous sitting through all of that nonsense. Now we all know, hopefully, that if we have a digital document, we always put our URLs. We don't want naked URLs, right? We don't want the http://www. We don't want that. There are only certain times that we allow that on our websites, our digital documents. We always want to put those links under meaningful text so that people can, get a hint about where they're going to be going before they click the link. What happens with a screen reader when they read out the URL as a naked URL that's linked is they actually hear it twice. And that's just unkind. we don't want to make people hear all that gobbledygook twice. So I recommend using link shorteners. And there's a couple of great benefits that you get if you do use a link shortener. And some examples of those are Bitly. So the link to the digital handout, I actually use Bitly. I like it because I can change the end of the URL to be whatever I want it to be with a Bitly account that's free. So for example, I made mine bit.ly/AIM social media. So it was meaningful rather than bit.ly/AQ75, all those characters. So that's a great one. Google also has a link shortening service, so goo.gl. TinyURL is also another one. And Owly is another one that's used by Hootsuite, which is a social media aggregation platform that I use for keeping track of those 23 accounts that I'm responsible for. It's another great tool if you don't know about that one. So on the right, what I show you is some analytics that you can get if you use these link shorteners, and that's a benefit. So it actually shows you how many clicks people have, so how many people have clicked on that link. It shows you where they're from, like what country they're from. It shows you over time, like, you know, you had this many clicks on this day, but this many clicks on this day, 148 overall. It shows you over the course of a month how many clicks your links are getting. So it's a great analytic tool in addition to being really, really kind on screen readers to use these link shorteners. Let's see. So Jessica says, but once you name it, you can't change the, that's right. That's right. Yeah. So that is a downside to using Bitly, that once you change the name of the link, you can't alter that. And they do need to have unique names. So if you've already used that name once, you need to use that only once for that one link. So yeah, that is a downside for sure. So here's an example of me using that Bitly link shortener in a post that I posted on Twitter. And I'm looking at Jessica's question there. Do any of the other ones have that capacity to edit the link? I haven't, so Google definitely doesn't, but it does have the tracking feature. TinyURL might, if you have an account, but I'm not positive about that. I definitely know Bitly is editable. I've seen TinyURLs with real text as part of the link, so I bet they do. And it's been a while since I've used TinyURL. Another thing to keep in mind is that Twitter will actually shorten your links for you if you don't use one of these services. So on the other social media platforms, they don't do that for you, but Twitter actually does. But if Twitter does it for you, you don't get the benefit of the analytics side of it. Yeah. So this was a link that I tweeted out, and it's a great blog post if you haven't looked at Brooks Publishing Company's blog. They have some great UDL posts. So how UDL, and I use the hashtag UDL, can help you create culturally accessible classrooms. And I tagged the author of the post at the Inclusion Lab, and I tagged the Brooks Publishing Company, who the blog is run by. And then I did my Bitly link, and I didn't choose to alter that link. It's just the bunch of characters. And then I did a hashtag UDL chat after that, because I wanted the people that follow that hashtag to see this post. So what I could have done to make this even better is, well, I included the image, and I did include an image description. But what I could have done would be to, in those brackets, say blog post, just to let people know that that's what they would be going to after they click the link. So that could make it even better. So, pulling it all together, so when we think about social media accessibility, we're really thinking about how to make this better for our followers, a more enjoyable experience for all of our followers, not just the ones who are sighted, not just the ones who are hearing, not just the ones who are mobility, so people who have no problems with mobility. We want everybody to be able to enjoy social media. And so we can do 5 things to make our posts much more accessible, not only for those people, but just for everybody. So plain language, using plain language in our social media posts, avoiding acronyms and abbreviations and jargon, using those Camel Case hashtags, that's one of my favorites. It just makes it easier to read. Using image descriptions when we can, so if we don't use the Twitter capability to put the image descriptions right in the tweet. We put those in the post, in the captions themselves, on the posts, or just in the post itself. We want to make sure that the videos that we link to have captions. So just taking a few minutes to go to the video before you post it from your account, and making sure that it's not just using the auto captions, that it actually has real captions attached to it. And when it doesn't, let your followers know that this is not captioned. And that will, that people will, if they don't want to click on the link that doesn't have captions, they won't click on it. But it's a nice thing to let your followers know. Or if it is in turn captioned, it's great to tell people that this video is captioned, or in brackets captioned. And then link shorteners. So using link shorteners to not only be kind to our screen reader users, but putting them towards the end of our post rather than the beginning, so that as soon as the screen reader starts to read that HTTP, they can shut off the screen reader and know that they're not missing out on any more of the post. So, let's see, I'm looking through some of the questions that you all have, which is great. So could you also give some program names for checking accessibilities? So, there is no way to check. I mean, you can always check the accessibility. Like you could use a product like the WebAIM, what's that called? It's something I use all the time. It's from WebAIM. It's an accessibility checker. It's free on their site. You can always put one of the social Wave. Thank you, John. So the Wave accessibility checker is a great one to take a look at some basic accessibility features. Oh, I've never tried the one from Axe. Yes. So Canvas also has an accessibility checker. But that basically just checks the accessibility of the website. There really are no accessibility checkers for social media that I've heard of. It's really up to the person who is posting to add these and pay attention to these accessibility enhancements that we can do as the posters to make social media a little bit more accessible for the followers. I know that there are some accessibility problems with Twitter, for example, especially when it's embedded on a website. So if you see an embedded tweet on a website, those aren't always screen reader accessible. I know that Facebook has the same problem. There was recently, I think last year, there was a forum that was run by DigitalGov, and they ran a forum on how to make social media more accessible. I know LinkedIn was the only big social media platform that actually showed up at that event. Google was invited, Twitter was invited, Facebook was invited. But the good news is that they're starting to pay attention to this accessibility. Let's see. Oh, great question. Another question, let's see. What is your experience with QR codes? That's an interesting one because you have to be able to see the QR code to line it up with the QR code viewer. And for those of you who aren't familiar with QR codes, they're kind of like barcodes, and you can have an app on your phone that reads the barcode and it goes directly to a link. We've used them in our paper books here at CAST as a way for people to access the internet links that are in the book. But yeah, QR codes are tough because you really, I mean, when you're on the web and you've got just a hyperlink, the link that's under meaningful text, you can just click on that as a screen reader user or somebody who has mobility issues. You can click on that link. QR codes you can't click on. You actually have to be sighted to be able to use them properly, I think. It seems to me, and this is just me kind of riffing because I'm actually not sure, but it's a great question. Yeah, that's what I would think would be the difficult part, is getting the code in the right spot for the reader. Because I mean, I have problems with that even as a sighted person sometimes when I use them. It's kind of hard to make sure that all of that gets aligned properly. Yes, so the section 508.gov has a great resource on accessible video and social media. Again, there's a lot of great resources on that digital handout, and I will add more. I'll actually add, I don't think I have that one on there. So this chat will be, you can, I'm not sure if you can download it or if we can download it and then attach it to the recording, and we'll do that. Audio-only messages. So there's something called Audio Boo that's actually kind of a Twitter for audio. I mean, the problem with that is if it's audio only, you're leaving out people who have hearing impairments. So it might be a good thing to do to not only include the audio, but include a transcript with that audio. So I believe that Audio Boo allows you to include a transcript, but I'm not positive about that. It's been a really long time since I've used Audio Boo. Let's see, I'm just scrolling up to make sure I didn't miss any other questions. Oh, somebody asked about colors. There are contrast checkers for colors in images and colors for websites. There's a great one on the WebAIM site. Let me just look it up real quick.
I can look it up.
Oh, okay. So Cynthia's going to look that up. She's the AIM Center account. That's Cynthia. But there are some great contrast checkers for people who are colorblind or low vision. So, and those are freely available on the web. You just have to put in, usually you put in the hex code for the colors, and some of them you actually upload the image, and it will, and actually if you create your image in Photoshop, you actually can view it in, for different types of color blindness. Oh, thank you. Yep, that's the color checker I was thinking of. And that's great for website text on background. But if you're doing images in Photoshop, it will actually simulate red-green color blindness, and then there's 7 different types of color blindness. So it's a great way to just check to make sure that that your images pass those color checkers. But also we need to remember that especially in our images, that really color shouldn't be the only thing that differentiates something from another. It shouldn't be the only signal. We want to make sure that we're not only using color, but we're using either text or a symbol, an icon, something that helps the person, if they can't see the colors at all, be able to recognize that these are different things, and use color meaningfully. But in terms of text on background, those are great checkers. Let's see, what other great questions these are really fantastic questions. This is great. Well, if there are no other questions, I'll just leave it open for. Yes, please do share my handout. Yeah, absolutely. I locked it down so that you can't actually edit it, but I think you can still make a copy of it if you wanted to use it and modify it for your own purposes. You're absolutely welcome to do that. My slides are on the AIM website, and there's also a link to that on the handout, so that you can always get to the slides if you want them. And just to wrap up, the AIM Center has just fabulous resources So I really encourage you to go check out the AIM Center resources. And again, we are on social media. The AIM Center is on Twitter, on Facebook, on Google+. So check us out there and follow us if you feel so inclined. There's the link again to the digital handout. You can email me if you have any other questions later, or if you can't actually copy that digital handout and you want to make a copy for yourself. Feel free to do that. Or you can just share the bit.ly link if you want to use it as is. That's totally fine. Share it far and wide. You can follow me on Twitter at Mindy, at MIN_D_J. And then join UDL chat. So if you're interested in Universal Design for Learning and you're on Twitter, and even if you're not on Twitter, you can be a lurker. Again, lurking is not creepy on social media, not as creepy as it is in real life. And we're every first and third Wednesdays from 9 to 9:30 Eastern, 6 to 6:30 Pacific. And it's a great chat. It's only a half an hour, so it doesn't take a whole hour out of your evening. I usually grab a cup of tea and sit in my jammies and chat about UDL. It's really a great time. Lots of great educators, advocates, lots of people interested in accessibility and accessible materials. Another chat that you might be interested in is AT Chat, and that's just hashtag AT Chat. And that is right before UDL Chat, actually. It's 8 to 9 Eastern, 5 to 6 Pacific. Oh, great, great, great. I know there are some regional Universal Design for Learning chats as well. I know that Patents in Indiana has a Patents ICAM chat, and they've been talking about Universal Design for Learning. There's also an accessibility chat. There's Access Chat, so let me write that one down. AXS Chat. And actually, to be Camel Case, I'll do AXS Chat. That one is actually an accessibility chat out of the UK, but it's fabulous. They have fabulous resources in that hashtag. So that's another good one. And then BCSC also in Indiana has and that's Bartholomew County Communities Consolidated School Corporation. They have, great, thank you for that link. They have another UDL focused chat that they do, and that doesn't have a regular schedule. They just kind of announce it and go with whatever day they have, but they usually do it twice that day. The other thing I wanted to mention while I have just a few minutes is that the ISTE Inclusive Learning Network, thank you, Leslie, the ISTE Inclusive Learning Network is running a slow chat this week on Twitter leading up to World Accessibility, or World Usability Day, which is on Thursday. And then Thursday night, we're having a webinar on the latest in accessibility and usability. So I will, let's see, I've got that link somewhere that I'll post. But that's another resource that is also really great. They're talking, the focus for World Usability Day this year is green UX and sustainable UX. So UX is user experience. So sustainable user experience is the topic this year. And I mean, I think everybody here might actually agree with me when I say that you can't have a sustainable user experience without it being accessible. It's just not possible, I don't think. So accessibility needs to be part of that conversation, and that's why we started doing that. And I'm just quickly getting the link to
Okay, so while Mindy is adding that link to the chat pod, we have 2:59, which is a great timing on Mindy's part. That was a lot of great information. I think everybody will be reaching a lot more people with their social media. So if anybody has any last questions or comments, now's the time to put those in the chat while we're wrapping up.
Yes, and thank you all so much. You've been great. The questions have been fantastic. I really appreciate it. So the chat we will download for you, and we will post it when we post the archive of this webinar. And thank you to Emily, our captioner, who has been fantastic. We really appreciate you doing this with us. It's great to have the captions available to everybody.
Great. Thank you, Leslie.
Thanks, Leslie.
I think we're ready to stop the recording. Thanks so much, everybody, for coming out today for this webinar.
Thanks, everyone.